voice. I have voice this time. We're gonna go through what a rig is. I hope we'll just try to delete the other one on the back end. Let me make sure everything is running hunky-dory this time. Okay, good. Looks like things are up and running again. That was pretty embarrassing. Anyways, let's go through what a rig is really quick. So, rigging is when we sort of give the mesh of what we're designing bones or properties that create a sort of skeleton within it that we can then control and animate. Not everything needs a rig to animate. A lot of things can be controlled locally or even by vertice if you really want to be a stickler about it. But rigging, by and large, is here to make these sort of transformations make a lot more sense, make it a lot easier, and be just way simpler to do over time than things like individual vertice movement or larger rotational sort of stuff. It's essentially how we give the skeleton to our mesh. And on the little example we can see over here, all of this is almost all rigged. The only exceptions here would be the tiny little peach that's floating around and the guy doing this is hand. And in addition to that, the fluid simulation. So we're going to be going through how to rig a non-standard rig, and how to paint weights, what the weight painting means, and how we can sort of use that in different non-standard rigs going forward. My hope is, since we're not doing a traditional humanoidal rig, you can apply this to humanoidal rigs knowing that there are examples that like work there. It's going to be easier to apply this to humanoidal rigs than to what we're going to do for our little cauldron buddy down there. But by teaching you a little bit extra, I want you to, I guess, feel encouraged to learn more about the sort of relationships we create within our bones so that animators, or if you are animating yourself, oftentimes riggers and animators are different people on the team, can take your tools and create interesting stuff with them. Whether or not you like rigging or animating more, most people like animating more, but knowing how to rig will save you a lot of trouble and a lot of headaches, and is by and large just a very important tool to use, especially if you just want to be like a 3D generalist. This will be a noticeable step forward in terms of complexity with the last tutorial. The last tutorial was, as usual, a very, very basic introductory. We have more than a couple of them on our YouTube, but if you feel like you're falling behind, or if you feel like I'm going too fast, either tell me in the chat, join in Discord. I'm going to join the meetup, what's it called, voice right now, and just talk to me, or like, don't worry. It's going to be on the YouTube VODs, and you can follow it later on if you'd like. In the meantime, let's get to rigging. Okay, so this is where I messed up last time and found out that I wasn't recording my voice. This is a completely rigged and animated scene. We have our dope sheet here, and we can scrub between things and see that our fella over here is dancing, right? The guys up here is licking the peach and squeezing it, and everything's sort of moving together. And if we look on our other screen here, let me pull this down. We're not really going to be using this that much, if only to display that we have an animation here. We'll see that there are a lot of these little, I'm going to say almost pyramid-like structures. Those are our bones. And our bones dictate how our characters move in 3D states, and sort of all have attributes dictated to vertexes that they're painted on. And we use these in order to animate our scenes. So rigging is essentially creating these skeletons for our creatures and making sure that they have influence in the ways that we want them to have influence. And if we want to see what it looks like when they have influence on something, all we have to do is bring up our weight painting mode, and we can see bone by bone that everything has a different influence based on where it is. That's what these little heat maps mean. This guy is a hard surface model, so I actually didn't add a lot of influence on these guys, but we'll talk about that later, and hopefully you'll understand more once we're done. The only thing I want to say now is we're going to be going through creating a non-standard rig. The idea here, of course, is, I think I may have already said this, that through learning how to do a non-standard rigs, you can see how to apply and sort of think beyond the typical humanoidal rig stuff that you can see all over YouTube, and hopefully learn just a little bit more about what you could do if your characters are weirder, stranger, or just altogether a not normal creation. If I'm going too fast, of course, you know it's with VODs. The files for this particular tutorial are in the Discord, and if you're interested, I'm going to be opening that file right now if you'd like to follow along. So, I'm going to go to Peach Hatchblend Rig for Class. We're not going to save this. And we're going to see our little cauldron buddy here is now in what we call, I guess, T-pose. T-pose being that he has made a nice little T out of his legs and his arms, along with his little tentacle eyes are fully stretched out, his big old smile is right there, and we're mostly just sort of in a very basic pose. If you play video games, you probably know about T-pose. Chances are something is glitched out on you and you've seen T-pose before. If we want to look at what things that are rigged look like, we can look above us, and we can see that these guys are still rigged, and they can still do their animations. The only guy who's not rigged right now is our big old pot cylinder. So let's just rename him Pot. It'll help us down the line. We're going to name these top teeth, though if we have time to bind these top teeth, we will. We may not, though. Top teeth, and those are, of course, bottom teeth. Again, I would like to thank Sandro a whole lot for providing us with the, or Pizwiz, the basis of these models. It was a lot of fun to create and make them dance and jiggle and have fun. And I don't know, always fun to work with your friends to make something neat. Anyways, let's get to rigging. First thing you want to do, specifically in Blender, is File. Oh wait, it's Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and you're gonna look for Rigify. Rigify. It's not entirely needed. There are armature options that are already within Blender, but I like using Rigify because honestly, you don't need to waste time constantly creating new humanoidal rigs from the ground up when you can just change certain attributes of one and go from there. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. We're going to go to Add. We're going to make sure our 3D cursor is right in the middle too, and it should be for yours as it is with everyone else. Add, Armature, Human Meta Rig. Other basic meta rigs are, we'll just go through it. So Human Meta Rig. Let's turn off our cauldron for now so we can see them. That is your basic Human Meta Rig. It's a little complex. We're definitely not going to be using all these joints. In fact, for right now, we're actually going to turn off the bottom teeth and the top teeth for the foreseeable future. Sorry that this is sort of a messy file structure, but you know, when you work for yourself, sometimes you let things go a little bit. This is definitely more complex. There are a ton of things here that we're just not going to be using. Like, obviously, this is made for a lady, and Pot Lady is, I guess it could be a lady, but we're not going to be needing these little breast controllers. We're not going to be using all of this face controllers either. It's just a little excessive for our guy and his very simple face. We won't be using all of these fingers. Truth is, we don't even need to use any of them, so don't worry about them. And our hip controller may end up being a little bit different as well. But that all said, not a big deal. Pretty easy for us to change up. Anyways, let's go through our other rigs as we do that. Add armature basic human rig. It's a far more basic one. It's gotten rid of our fingers, gotten rid of our head, still has these, but like, again, we can get rid of pretty much anything, so don't worry. And essentially, we just have a very basic rig from here. Let's just look at everything else, just so we can have an idea of different sort of terminology. Quadruped. Quadruped, think dogs or cats. These all control in a similar way. These bones will mostly do the same thing, but you can tell we also have tails, and we have the backwards knees, and all the fun little things that our four-legged friends have. But quadruped and humanoidal are terms you're going to hear all the time when rigging. I'm sure you probably already know them from other things in your life, but useful to remember. And of course, we have all of these here as well. What is useful for a lot of this stuff, though, is let's say that you have created a creature that is somewhat similar to one of these, like let's say you made a pterodactyl. Having this sort of bird armature as a starting point can be very useful for just sort of skipping ahead and seeing what works and doesn't work for your rig, and maybe exaggerating the things that are suitable for your needs. Just useful to remember to maybe look at those the same ways that you would look at primaries and simple meshes in order to create a model. Ultimately, this stuff is super helpful for you and is around for it to be helpful. So if you want help, take it. And if things makes things simpler, you should probably use them. May sound like a silly thing to say, but to tell you the truth, it all sort of helps in the long run. I'm just going to start disabling certain things that we're not going to need to see right now. Just because it's nice to have a little clearer workspace. Whatever. Anyways, we'll leave these guys out, just because it might take more time, and time is always of the essence when you're teaching a class. So, here's our toothless little cauldron guy. He's got a big mouth, got some arms, everything else like that. He's currently not facing the direction our rigs face, but it's fine. We can address that right now. We'll go to our armature, go to basic human meta rig. We're going to just rotate this way a little bit, go down to angle, 90, and there we go. He is set up in a way that is helpful for us to see. Next thing we're going to do, and this may just be a habit from working in Maya. Also, just change your layout. It's probably going to be useful for you to work in a bigger space. We're not using keyframes, so it doesn't hurt. Object, apply, rotation. And just try to apply all your stuff as you go on. Essentially, it just makes it so you can zero out a lot of these values, and potentially in the future, if you need to change those values, it'll be easier for you to do so. Next thing we want to do is on this little tab over here, viewport display in front. Lets you be able to see these things always while you're working on it, and you don't have to turn on things like this or your wireframe mode or anything like that. We will be using wireframe mode later, but for right now, it'll be more helpful to be able to see everything than not. Anyways, let's press tab and go into edit mode. So we see our fella here. It's time for us to start moving everything around. First things first, let's delete the stuff we don't need. We're not going to need these breasts, unfortunately. Just delete all of these bones. No need for it. Truth is, we could delete a lot of this spine. The way we would do that is we'd probably dissolve the bones. First thing I want to do, though, before we even think about deleting certain parts of this, is to simply get our hips in place. Now, there are a couple ways usually forward kinematics would dictate how we do this. I'm just going to do things a simple way. I'm just going to move things roughly to where they should be. Now, not always the right thing to do. Most people will even tell you as much. It's often far more useful for you to start doing these things exactly And in our case, the way that we're going to do things exactly is to lock our view into certain perspectives as we move things around to our mesh. Remembering that alt-clicking and doing moving the camera around is always going to help us get to where we need to for this sort of thing. So just try and line things up as best you can with each individual piece on each individual layer, knowing that we can of course go in and change things as we move on. So from this bone, let's see how it's looking on this side. Looking mostly good. We might be able to take it up a little bit forward. Good. And this guy is at the top of the hip, which is pretty much where we want him. And with most rigs, you're going to want to add a little bit of bend in the bone. And we're going to go over that when we figure out how to do IKs. But essentially, the little bend we see here is telling our model that we want it to bend in that direction when we do certain parenting commands. It'll be the same in Maya as it is in almost anything else. Again, I keep saying Maya. It should be said that Maya is definitely considered the standard when you are rigging and animating any sort of 3D model. It's often, to many people, still considered the standard 3D modeling program. But, you know, us at NOGD also realized that Maya is a, like, what is it, $300 to like even like $1,000 program, especially complete with like all of the niceties that people have grown to really like about it. Like, so it's not really a feasible thing for us to ask any of you to use. So we instead choose not to. And Blender is a wonderful program that is free, and in many ways, personally, I think comparable, if not better than Maya, in particular with regular low poly sculpture. And I definitely don't think I'm alone in that. So you're in no way like getting a truly second-class experience by using Blender. You're just not getting Maya. And the only real downside to that is you're not learning the sort of particular environment that a lot of studios may use. And I say may because there's no real dictation on what a studio will use or not, especially like, let's say if you're working for a small team, there's also, of course, a non-zero chance that they too will use Blender. Anyways, what I'm doing now is I'm taking the skeleton from our humanoidal rig and sort of building it into a rig that matches the unique skeletal structure of my weirdo pod guy here, and trying to use each bone in a place that is easy for me to follow and can eventually sort of lead it back to our arms here. Truth is, a lot of this placement doesn't matter, and you'll see why very shortly. The way that I'm going to be animating this character is a lot like how someone would animate a hard surface model, just with some parts sort of, I want to say, excluded. Those being the arms, the legs, and the tentacles. And we'll go through that once we do that. Because essentially, he's a big old cauldron. So he's made of cast iron, let's imagine. He's not squishy like the guys above him. So when we go into weight painting, we're going to figure out the difference between why we would do things one way and why we would do things the other. Anyways, keep moving things along until you think they start lining up. We're going to just move this up, and this up. You can articulate the fingers for this if you'd like, and I'm actually going to show you very briefly how, but just know that like I won't be going into detail on that for this particular thing. Hand slot out like this. Our elbows bend this way, right? So that's where we're going to make the bend in this particular thing. It's not entirely important that you do this because we're not using IKs for this. We'll also go over that very soon, what IK and FK mean. We've done that before in the past, but it's never bad to have a refresher. And we're starting to see something that makes more sense. Let's look at what we have. We can technically add a sort of head here. See it right here. Personally, I don't think it's that necessary. So we're just going to delete it. And the good thing about this is the less stuff we have in here, less things that we're going to have to paint down the road. To be honest, I don't even know what that was. That'll probably come back to bite us, I'm sure. Let's see, where did that stop? Well, let's see what this bone is called. This bone is, of course, called bone, which means we absolutely don't need it. So let's delete it and take it out of here. We could use these sort of hips here. Personally, I don't know how much we need it. I'm going to put it here anyways, though. I think that the hips could provide some interesting movement if we want to provide a controller on it, just in this little area right here, and we're going to put this right here as well. The hope being that we won't need to do any extensive FK movement here, or IK movement with these guys, but I think it sort of is in a placement that if we want to do minute detail changes, we can. Anyways, now we're going to press A. Actually, no, we're going to delete the head again first. Sorry about that. I just want to know where that bone came from. I probably just pressed something. Anyways, delete. And now we have our very basic rig. Before we finish our rig, we're going to create a new bone structure, and we're going to extrude from, I think, right here, honestly. So, I didn't know that. That's cool. So I was going to say you can press X to extrude in a very specific location, but also if you hold down middle mouse button while extruding, press E to extrude, it looks like you can lock it to certain axes, which is super useful for rigging. And just click to put it down. Anyways, we're not going to have a bone this big. We're not even going to connect it, so we're going to parent, clear, disconnect bone, move it, and we're going to sort of create a small little area that it connects to here. We should still clear our parent. Clear parent as well, because we're going to redo it anyways. And we're going to make a little base bone for him going into our tentacle here. Nothing too big. You don't have to... Again, this is sort of free form because it's not necessarily a normal thing. And we're going to just sort of move it in here. And since we haven't created any new bones now, we're going to start creating new bones with our guy right here. First, obviously save. I'm going to make a new thing in here just in case you're trying to download from here. So rig for class. I'm going to just preemptively call this one finished. And save as, but you can call it whatever the hell you want. I am not your boss. And we're going to call this, I called this tentacle in the last rig, but it's not really tentacle. I'm going to call it eye stalk. So looking at him right now, I'm always bad with stage right, stage left. So let's just check this. So it's left. Eye stalk. We can either go numbered or not. I'm gonna go eye stalk base, and we're gonna make sure that we follow the naming convention and do .l. So upper arm .l, eye stalk base L. Anyways, now we're gonna make sure that our alignment is true with this or at least we're going to try as best we can. And we're going to extrude from this bone, making sure to use local. Actually, we're going to use normal. We're going to extrude once again, and just a little bit, and then we're going to let this take us the rest of the way there. And you may be thinking that this is not a lot of, keep kind of pushing until it gets in the right spot. You might think to yourself, if you're a more advanced rigger, that this is definitely not a lot of subdivisions for something this big and something we want to be a tentacle. Don't worry, we'll get there. I should also say at this point, you can change how anything in your armature looks. We'll go eye stalk. I'm going to rename this one as well. First, this eye stalk mid L. We'll turn off the period there too. And let's see. So we're not going to go to custom properties. We're going to see viewport display. You see the octahedral, stick, b-bone, envelope, etc. Stick is often pretty good. You get a better idea of it. Octahedral is good, I think, if you want to have an idea of how things sort of shape up in relationship to each other and protect. I don't know. It's sort of maybe easier to look at as a glance, and you get the nice feeling of it looks like a bone. I like this because I can get to a very minute sort of level of detail within here. If it's not lining up perfectly, that's definitely bad news. So it is stuff that you should spend time on and not slack. Not only will it save you time in weight painting, but it will also sort of make sure that everything afterwards sort of makes more sense. So anyways, let's go through that. Octahedral, stick, b-bone, which is actually what we will be using, envelope, wire. I think wire is useless. I like b-bone. B-bone is pretty easy for me to look at. To be honest, never understood why certain things decide to be huge and why others don't, but don't worry about it. Ain't the biggest deal. Anyway, that will be the stock that goes to our eye here. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to extrude the next two parts. Again, we're going to use our normals to do that. Easiest way to do that, press E, press enter, and then do that, and it'll go right along your normal. Do it one more time, and we have the end of our bone. So let's label our last two ones here. Well, we can just take our naming convention from here. Eye stalk mid L, eye stalk end 1 L. Let's do eye stalk ball base. Take out the 1, and we'll call this eye stalk ball end. Alright, so everything is labeled, and for the most part, everything is good to go. First thing we're going to do, we're going to go to armature, symmetrize, and it's not doing it the right way. Huh. That's interesting. So it has symmetrized, as you can see. It's just symmetrizing on the wrong axis. First thing we can do is see if deleting all this helps. Armature, symmetrize. It does not. Let's try turning off normal and going for global. Not ideal, but also not the end of the world. What we can do here, hopefully, is just mirror That's not what we want. Mirror Y global. That is what we want. And mirror Z global. Nope. Let's mirror Y global one more time. Nope. Mirror X global one more time. And that's what we want. This isn't ideal. Usually we want things to line up perfectly, but in the effort of doing the stuff for a class, that's pretty good still. A little bit of a bummer that didn't cooperate with us, but you know, sometimes you just gotta roll with the punches. Anyways, with that, let's examine our rig and see just how well everything's going. Truth is, the rig itself isn't completely flush. We can see that just from how things are moving around on here. So we can change minute details here as well to better fit our rig on both sides. Sometimes you'll have a model that is completely flush, and when that happens, you won't have to do this, but not all the time, so just the way the cookie crumbles, you know. Slick, good from here, good from here, good from here. Let's give it a last inspection, and that all seems pretty good. Anyways, before we go on, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make these bendy bones. This is a uniquely Blender thing. I'm sure there's probably an equivalent in Maya, but a bendy bone is essentially like a bone with a bunch of subdivisions. So we're gonna press bendy bone. We're gonna start racking them up. It's gonna be more visible to us once we put the armature in B-bone. Let's select one of these, go to bendy bone. Oh. We'll start seeing some bendy bones. It's going to be doing that, and I'll tell you why it's doing that in a second. You see all the start handle, end handle stuff? That is why our bendy bone is being funky. So, what we needed to do before is we need to clear the parents of these guys here. So when I move this, these guys are clearly not attached. Now, press your child, parent, clear, clear parent. Once again, not attached. Cool. Anyways, back to bendy bones. Well, best laid plans. Who cares? We're gonna still do that. We're gonna have our start handle, and we're gonna label it to iStock base L, and we're going to put our end handle on iStock ball base L. And we're going to make both of these absolute. Well, I'm a little kind of upset that this is not necessarily working the way I want it to be. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to make sure that there's not anything that I've forgotten. We want inherent rotation. We want that. So that's right. Now I think, either way, let's move on, and if it comes to bite us, it'll come to bite us. So with our bones, we can also add custom properties that sort of make them look differently as well. I'm going to make sure that this is something that is available on this, because I usually add a couple properties. That's where we're going to go into these guys afterwards. Either way, let's do it on the other side, see if it does the same thing. So I believe our parent is already cleared. You know, another thing, I wonder, we go into local, let's give it a little bit of an offset. Go into normal rather. Funny. I think I may see a problem here. Alright. Anyways, let's make our bendy bone again, and we will worry about the rest later. I'm going to give it 5 segments. This one's already being smoother, which is cool. Remember, absolute on both of these. Looks like the eye stalk thing, and that's why we did the eye stalk stuff earlier. I should have said everything that we give a certain naming convention will follow it, essentially, as long as you label it in the same sort of manner that Blender and the rest of your rig adheres to. So it's pretty cool. Anyways, I'm gonna make sure that I'm not missing anything on how to give bones. Yes, there we are, custom shape. So we go into our bone thing. Let's click on add an individual bone. Huh. Okay, so eye stalk base art. Doesn't matter, we're already here. And we're gonna go to custom object. Right now we already have the custom object, control I, but I'm gonna show you how to make it really quickly as well. Make sure you're in object mode and go to add. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea why it does this way. It prefers mesh over curves because if you're used to Maya, I'm sure you're probably more used to using curves. We're just gonna make a circle. A circle is still very much like a curve path, but you know, a little different. And in our circle, we're gonna see all these wonderful things. We want our thing to kind of look like that. So let's take these little parts in a concentric path, make sure our soft select is on, extend it to the point that it makes sense, and honestly, this is a fine controller. We'll have an idea of where everything goes if we have it like this. So, and the effort not to waste time, that will be our controller. Anyways, so we're gonna name it eye guy. Why not? We're gonna click again on our bone, and for some reason, I don't know why it wants to do it this way. We're gonna click on eye guy, and we're gonna see that eye guy is now in place of that bone. We don't really like how that looks. If you're me, at least, I don't like how that looks because it is rotated in a way that I don't find advantageous towards that. So we're just going to move the guy up 90 and around 90. We're going to do that. And now eye guy is a useful controller that looks a little different and is easier to grab on the rig. We want to do it for the other side, same deal. I'm actually going to clear these and bring him down and try to do the same thing we did over here. And now we're going to try to make our start handle I stalk base L. Oh, ball base, whoops. This is so fascinating. I have no idea why it's doing this. Anyways, it's on scale absolute, and we're gonna do, well, it will likely work all the same. Oh, whoops, I did ball base R. Anyways. Now, with all of our guys mostly matched up, we're going to first click our armature. It's always child to parent, parent, parent with automatic weights. So hopefully what that means is once we press our armature and we go to one of these guys, and let's say we move the foot up, you're going to find out that I actually did it wrong. So once again, Control Z out, click our guy, click this, then click our guy, parent, armature with automatic groups. Now that we can kind of see that the mesh changed a little, that is likely confirmation that things have gone our way. Anyways, let's also change our object here as well. We're not using that controller, we're using our new one. Cool. And let's go into pose mode just to see how everything works. And we can see that he's got a little leg that's moving. And technically, congratulations, you've done it. You have made an IK rig. What we're going to do now are all the fun stuff. I think it's Shift Control C will add your constraints. We're going to go to inverse kinematics. Well, in inverse kinematics, it's called an IK. IKs mean that when you move a bone, it follows your parent bone instead of the one that it's supposed to normally be at. Wow, this is interesting. I've not seen this before. That's because I'm doing bendy bones, of course. So let's just get the hell out of bendy bones. We are not messing around with that. And we're going to go to our relationships. Now, every IK thing usually shows up in here. If it does not, we have a problem. So let's see. Obviously, the other thing we can do is look in here and realize that this is where our IK is. Chain length, we go to 2. And now, when we lift this, it'll do a terrible job and not follow it at all. Bone heel. Well, the next thing we can do, I forgot about this. We're gonna undo all this, sorry. We're gonna go into our bone. Once again, going into our armature, displaying as octahedral so we can see this. And don't worry, this is not too complex. We're going to extrude. Oh yeah, we're in pose mode. We don't want to be in we want to be in edit mode. We're going to go to global, extrude, press X, and it'll just sort of go along this X-axis. I'm going to call this knee hole .l. Oh, I also saw something else I've done. It doesn't really matter that we're doing this. Yeah, it does, it does. We should not do this. Let's make sure that we're not rigged when we do this. So just, if we're already rigged, it's not hard to unrig. Parent, clear parent. If that doesn't work, parent, touch the pot too. Parent, clear parent. Now everything is separate. Totally fine. We're going to do the last thing I forgot to. We're going to make knee poles. Sorry, it's a little bit slapdash, but you know, it's just the way shit goes. Anyway, it's going to go back to viewport display. Display is octahedral. Grab on this. E to extrude. X to, we don't want it locally. We want it globally. E, X to extrude along the X-axis. There we go. Parent, clear, clear parent. Move it up here. You know what? I'm going to do that just the same. And we're going to do the same thing over here. Looking at it from this perspective. It's not entirely necessary to do this. The knee poles will still function. But yeah, same deal. E, X. Let's match it as well as we can. Parent, clear, clear parent. Let's grab both of our guys. Move them a little bit forward. Let's say to right here. I'm going to make the poles a little smaller, but that's your discretion. Knee pole dot R and knee pole dot L, respectively. Ah, well, we've named the rig that. So I'm just going to call it pot rig. Make things easier for us. Go back to bone. Knee pole dot L. Knee pole dot R. Cool. All right. Now, this is the rig we want. Our bendy bones are here. Our skeleton is here. Let us now finally do what we want to do. First click your pot, then press your armature. General rule of parenting in Blender is child to parent, and we want the armature to be a parent. So with automatic weights, we can see that since the mesh slightly changed shading that it took, and there we go, we have our thing. So let's go to pose mode, click on these two, Shift Control C, and we're going to do inverse kinematics. We're going to make sure that this works. See how it has a high leg up here? Obviously we don't want that. Let's go to our bone relationships. Chain length 1. Pole target, meta rig, and bone. We're going to find knee pole L. And sometimes that'll cause this to kind of go nuts. Don't worry about it. Oh, wait, actually, this is already wrong. I can tell pretty easily because we want the affected bone to turn a different color. So click on your ankle. Really, you could click on your ankle or you could click here. I like using the ankle. I was a little upset last time I did this rig because it did not give me the rotation I wanted immediately, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. Shift Control C. Clicking that to that. Shift Control C. Inverse kinematics. See how that's orange? That's what we want. Pole target. Meta rig. Bone. Knee pole L. And we're going to change our chain length to 2. And now he should be a little better, but as we can see, there's still this weird little rotational thing. Again, not a big deal, don't worry about it. Go back to your relationship here, pole angle. Pretty sure if we change that to 90, no, it's not it. Yeah, rotation. It's not influence. I'm not sure what happened here. As you see, it works, it's just not working the way we want it to. Chain length 1, 2. And our rotation is our issue now. So, go into our rotation. Not that way. If we go up here, no, not that way. Rotation. Interesting. Well, I'm going to save this really quick, and we're going to cheat. We're going to go this one, since I already do that. We're going to look at how we made our relationship here. I'm going to go into pose mode. Obviously that is our rig. Pole angle -90, meta rig, knee IKL, and the IK is on this bone, we know that. It's going over there. And our chain length is 2, pole angle -90, iterations are that. Use tail and stretch. Let's make sure that there's nothing additional on our ankles. This is our ankle. I actually did a custom bone for it. All right, this all seems fine. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna make sure that I didn't mess everything horribly up. So pole angle 90. It looks better, but it's not ideal. You know what? I think I remember. It's because there is a parenting still here. So we're actually going to have to clear parent. Go to edit mode. Whew, almost there. So parent, clear parent. Same with this one, parent. It's funny, the rigging tutorial I first learned from had someone do the same thing. Oh gosh, sorry, a work thing just came up, but don't worry about it. I will answer it later. Anyways, same deal. Child to parent, make sure that we didn't mess it up. Pose. Shift Control C. Inverse kinematics. Object meta rig. Bone. Knee pull L. Now when we lift this, chain length 1, 2. It's funny. Honestly, not entirely sure what's going wrong here, but let's see if there's not something we can change. Easy way we can see if there's something wrong. Here to here, Shift Control C, inverse kinematics, 1, 2. Pull target there, meta rig, knee pull R, pull angle 90, and there we go. We have our inverse kinematic knee. Sorry that took so long, but sometimes best laid plans and so forth, right? Let's make sure one more time that inverse kinematics, 1, 2, pull target, meta rig, bone, and knee pull L, pull angle 90. Let's do negative 90. And same deal. Works now. That is inverse kinematics. I see Sandra has joined later, where I suppose things have gotten a little less hectic. Anyways, that's inverse kinematics. That's the stuff that lets us move our things. What does the knee pull do? The knee pull dictates where the knee is in relationship. So if we want to have him do a funnier little thing with the knee, he does this. We're going to bring that back down. And now, our next part. Grab this, Shift Control C. We're doing stretch 2, the eye stalk mid. I'm pretty sure all of these values are fine. And what that means, hopefully, is that this will, oh, maybe it's the other way around. It's been a while since I've done this one. So Shift Control 3, Shift 2, yeah, that's it. Cool, stretch 2. And now this fella, thanks to our bendy bones, is going to move to him every time. So click our child, parent, Shift Control 3, C, stretch 2, and now we have another bendy bone. And what that gives us is our wonderful guy. First thing, once again, let's turn off octahedrals, put these on B bones, and now we can see that our tentacles have the type of fun little movement that we like. So they'll stretch and follow our guy all over the place. Sorry again for all the stuff with the IK. I feel like that happens to me every time with IKs, but don't worry about it. If it happens to you, whatever, human moment. We all suck sometimes. Anyways, it looks like the automatic weights have done a pretty good job. Maybe not the perfect job, but good enough. The real test is always how the base moves. So it's kind of going, but you can see that like, it's not what we want to do entirely, huh? Also looks like this has cleared a parent as well, which is not the best. I see what happened here. So, I'm just gonna child to parent, make, connected. Oh, let's try the other way. Child to parent, make, connected, cool. And that, so once we go into pose mode, move him around a little bit easier as well. And that's pretty cool if we wanted our pot to do funny laughs and stuff like that. But since I don't want the pot to do that, we're actually going to weight paint differently. But let's first look at how the weight paint works. And now that we have this all worked, let's go into, first we select our rig, then we select our object, and that'll bring up our weight paint mode. Weight paint, as we showed before, will show you the influence each bone has on your rig. And you can see that this is doing a ton of heavy lifting, right? This isn't doing too much heavy lifting at all. This is doing a ton of heavy lifting. This is doing a lot of heavy lifting for the legs, right? For the most part, I think the legs are set up fine, and we're not going to do anything additional here. What we will do, however, is really overhaul the amount of stuff that this base is going to actually do, potentially give weight to this beyond just the butt, and maybe even nullify all of this. The idea for this is that we're kind of making a hard surface model, so we don't want it moving around too much. Sorry, just folks at work are being a little bit of a dork. And we're going to start painting weights. What does painting weight mean? If we bring up our vertices, we're going to see each one of these up here. We have our normal wireframe. We can see where everything connects. Over here we have radius, weight, and strength. So radius is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to do 100, and it gets bigger. Weight, if we put at 1, let's see what happens. We can see that it automatically gets red, right? And let's see if we put it to 0, we apply it to here, it turns it blue. So weight essentially dictates the amount of value that it puts on there. Strength is how long you have to put it on there to do something. So if we go to 0.5, we have to do it twice or 3 times, etc., to get it to turn as red as we'd like to. And if we put it on nothing, it does that. So I'm going to put it on 1. 1 is fine. In fact, let's try 2. And we're going to just sort of paint with our bottom selected all of the stuff we want influenced by his hips, which is a lot in my case. And for yours, you can do whatever you want. This is me. I just want a lot of influence coming from his hips. So I'm going to make this super red. I want when he moves his hips, I want his entire lower body to move with it. Okay, and we're starting to see how it turns red. And everything around here, we can leave a little loose if we'd like to. That is all dictated by certain other parts. If we want this to be more hard surface, we can chase it along these edges here. We can also tell that it's still being symmetric. We have our symmetry turned on. Super useful for us to save time and not have to worry about everything. I'm sorry, just a slight burp request. Anyways, as we said earlier, I kind of wanted that to pretty much dictate a lot of stuff here. I think we can actually just clear this bone off altogether. I don't think, since our weight is already sort of dictated by here, this is not really going to add anything. This is redundancy. So this way, when we move this bone, honestly, nothing is going to change. And try to make sure you scrub everything, because sometimes when you do automatic weights, you'll see that it gets into weird spots it's not supposed to. Always being sure to look at every weight you can when you do this. So I'm actually going to look at our bottom weight again. It seems like it goes right at the end here. So I'm going to cut it off here and cut off the top here. I'm going to give it a little bit of a segment here just for the sake of this one. So this sort of tutorial. So let's go up to here. And we're going to change our radius so we can get a more minute spot. We're just going to slowly make sure that nothing is being too redundant. And we're going to grab our last bit here. Once again, weight 1. Actually, let's go weight 0 and make our radius larger. We're going to just start from a clean slate, so to speak. Just super fast, super simple. Get it all out. And then put it back to 1, put our radius back down to 100, and we're going to have it get the inside. Make sure that this is something that's kind of strange. I've noticed a little bit. I wonder if I'm doing something wrong, but the more I use Blender, you'll see that like sometimes you'll have other weights show up when you're coding things. Don't worry too much about it. You can always undo stuff the other way. Sometimes it's just things being weird, and I mean any 3D program in the world, Blender, Maya, 3ds Max, Houdini, whatever, things will go weird. 3D is weird. It is often a thing where things mess up, so don't get too frustrated, save often, and try to make sure that you keep a good head on your shoulders. Anyways. Honestly, that's probably the most important like 3D advice in the world. 3D is really frustrating at first. It'll get easier as you go on. You'll learn your specific hotkeys and you'll learn how to make things simpler for you, but it's not, things don't undo quite as well as other programs in 3D. So just sort of know that and make sure that you just, you know, keep your head on a swivel, don't get upset. Anyways, this is fine. If we go through our various things, he's just not going to have anything on it. That's all cool with me. The only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove some of the advanced weight in the mouth from this guy, because I don't think that this needs it to influence all of that. You want to give the thighs a little influence, but not that much, right? Not enough that it goes up to this guy's mouth. So let's clean this up, make sure it doesn't go to the pot's body, and if we left it on, we would see that like certain deformation would affect it that we wouldn't want. So again, clean things up, and you'll sort of start to, sometimes you'll even notice like the actual mesh will change as you do it. And don't worry if you feel like you didn't do this right the first time. Oh, I didn't know that. Cool. You can just press right click to change that. It's totally okay. Even after you've made your keyframes in your animation, you can go back and change this at any time you want. It'll work just fine. Yeah, you know, this is fine. I'm happy with this. Okay. Let's check all of these. See, that has way too much influence, right? So let's do some cleaning up here. Once again, weight 0, radius, we'll make it bigger, strength, whatever. This is too much. We don't want that all coming from the shoulder. We don't even want the shoulder really affecting the pot, because we want the pot to seem solid, right? So let's keep moving things up, moving it along, and cleaning up this thing. It's cool that Sandro is one of the people who comment on this. As I've said before, I've this is his drawing, and it was really fun to bring it to life. So thank you, Sandro, for providing this illustration for us. I think that's mostly okay. I'm just going to take out some of the influence on here and on the mouth. That's okay. Same deal. Let's just scrub it, clean it. Don't worry too much if it isn't perfect, but definitely get all the stuff that it has no right influencing out of there. Truth is, since we already tested a portion of this, you know, just seeing and showing you what the stuff does, we probably don't need to weight paint certain aspects. We just already know work, and that would include some of the eye stalk stuff. I think this is fine from what we have influenced. Let's make sure all of this stuff looks okay. Looks fine, looks fine. Oh yeah, just a little bit more. I don't want the shoulder affecting the inside of the mouth. Or the forearm rather. So let's take that out. Make sure it's mirrored on this side. And that's just part of how automatic weights works in any program. It'll try its best, but like if you're not doing a pretty much by the numbers humanoidal thing, it'll mess up. So don't get upset, just know that happens. So let's see, the stalk of this base is not great. Again, it's getting inside of the mouth. Check up here, clean this up. I'm okay with the stalk, of course, having influence on the area right next to it, but none of this. In fact, I'm actually going to paint a little bit, 0.25, right on these guys. Here, here, here. Turn off our symmetry really quick. Same deal. And let's go to 0.25 again. And and I think this should be good. So let's go out of here, go into object mode, go back on our shaded mesh, click our armature, go into pose mode, and let's move the eye stalks first. And we can see that it's mostly following our bendy bone, which is good. Obviously there's some issue, but not a lot. And it'll make our fun little tentacles the way we want. And let's move this hip, and we can see that it moves the entire base, which is what we wanted. So he moves like a cauldron, right? Like bup, 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 bup. That's what we wanted. Let's move our arms, make sure that it does the right things. Looks like it does. And cool. That looks like, for the most part, we're exactly where we want it to be. Looks like the legs are being a little silly, but for to tell you the truth, these IK legs, as long as they follow these, we're fine. And I'm going to have them sort of look at you and wave goodbye. And that is how we rig a thing. Thanks for watching, y'all. Hopefully you can apply all of this stuff to your models, and that's part of why I did non-standard, because sometimes it's frustrating to try to look this stuff up and do stuff just for the type of thing that affects your model and not necessarily something that, which may not, you know, always be a human. But this time, our model works. So if we press tab, it goes in between the poses. We can make keyframes down here, and we're gonna go into that in our next class. So thanks for watching, y'all. It's Calder saying goodbye once again.